The champagne flute felt cold against my palm as I checked my phone for the fourth time in 10 minutes. 8:30. Vanna was already an hour late to our anniversary dinner, and the waiter kept circling our table like a patient hunter waiting for an opening. My name is Marlo Trasker, and I'm a technical consultant who specializes in making broken systems work again. Tonight, I was starting to think my marriage might be one system beyond repair. The restaurant was everything Vanna had wanted. Upscale Beverly Hills establishment with crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, and prices that made my wallet weep. I'd made the reservation 3 weeks ago, specifically requesting the corner table where we'd had our first date 5 years back. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was now sitting here alone, surrounded by happy couples sharing intimate conversations and stolen glances. My phone buzzed. Finally. My boss won't let me leave work. Happy anniversary. Eat without me. I stared at the message, reading it twice to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. No apology. No explanation beyond the obvious lie. Just a dismissive command to eat without her on the night that was supposed to celebrate our marriage. The waiter approached again, his professional smile wearing thin. "Sir, would you like to order, or shall we wait a bit longer?" "Give me another few minutes," I said, though we both knew I was stalling. I looked around the restaurant, taking in the scene with fresh eyes. The couple at the next table was sharing dessert, feeding each other strawberries like they were still in their honeymoon phase. The older pair by the window was holding hands across the table, their wedding rings catching the candlelight. Everyone here was celebrating love, connection, partnership. Everyone except me. My phone sat silent on the white tablecloth, Vanna's message still glowing on the screen. My boss won't let me leave work. The more I read it, the more it felt like a slap across the face. Derek Sloan, her boss at the public relations firm, had been a constant presence in our marriage for the past year. Late nights, weekend emergencies, business trips that seemed to multiply like rabbits. I'd been patient, understanding, supportive even. Vanna was ambitious, and I respected that about her. She wanted to climb the corporate ladder, make a name for herself in the cutthroat world of Los Angeles PR. I'd encouraged her, celebrated her victories, consoled her through the setbacks. But this? Missing our anniversary dinner with a text message that read like she was canceling a dentist appointment? The waiter returned, his patience finally exhausted. "Sir? I'll have the salmon," I said, closing the menu with more force than necessary. "And another bottle of wine, the good stuff." If I was going to eat alone on my anniversary, I might as well do it properly. The salmon arrived 20 minutes later, perfectly prepared and utterly tasteless. I ate mechanically, washing each bite down with wine that probably cost more per glass than most people spent on dinner. The alcohol helped numb the embarrassment of being the lone diner in a restaurant full of couples. But it did nothing for the growing anger in my chest. I'd always prided myself on being reasonable, logical, the kind of guy who thought through problems and found practical solutions. But sitting there, abandoned on what should have been one of our most important nights, I felt something shift inside me. The careful balance I'd maintained between understanding husband and self-respecting man was starting to tip. My phone remained silent. No follow-up text, no apology, no acknowledgement that she'd just ruined our anniversary with the casual indifference of someone canceling a Netflix subscription. I was reaching for my wallet when she appeared beside my table. She was stunning in the way that made you forget your own name for a moment. Auburn hair pulled back in a professional ponytail, green eyes that seemed to see right through you, and the kind of smile that suggested she knew secrets you'd never guess. Her name tag read Sierra, and she was carrying a water pitcher, like she belonged here. "Excuse me," she said, her voice soft but urgent. "Are you Marlo Trasker?" I nodded, surprised. "How did you—" "Your wife made the reservation under your name. I'm Sierra, and I've been watching you sit here alone for the past hour." She glanced around, then leaned closer. I need to tell you something, and you're not going to like it. The wine had made me bold, or maybe just reckless. Try me. She took a breath, her knuckles white around the pitcher handle. Your wife is in the VIP room with my husband. The words hit me like a physical blow. I set down my wine glass carefully, my hands suddenly steady despite the alcohol. Your husband? Derek Sloan, your wife's boss. Her green eyes flashed with something between anger and pain. They've been in there for 2 hours, drinking champagne and acting like they're the only 2 people in the world. The restaurant noise faded to a dull hum. The VIP room. I knew it well. A private dining area behind tinted glass where the restaurant's most important clients could eat without being disturbed or observed. You're sure? I asked, though something in her expression told me she was absolutely certain. I served them myself. Champagne, oysters, the works, and the way they were looking at each other. She shook her head. I've been married to Derek for 3 years. I know what he looks like when he's interested in someone. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Not surprise, exactly. More like confirmation of something I'd been trying not to see for months. The late nights, the business trips, the way Vanna had started dressing differently, paying more attention to her appearance, checking her phone constantly. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Sierra's smile was sharp as broken glass. Because I'm tired of being lied to, and I'm guessing you are too. I looked toward the back of the restaurant, where the VIP room sat behind its wall of tinted glass. From here, it looked like any other private dining area, but knowing what was happening behind that glass changed everything. What do you want to do about it? Sierra asked. The question hung in the air between us. What did I want to do? The old Marlowe would have paid his bill, gone home, and waited for Vanna to return with whatever story she'd prepared. He would have given her the benefit of the doubt, accepted her explanations, maintained the peace. But the old Marlowe hadn't been abandoned on his anniversary. The old Marlowe hadn't just learned his wife was in a private room with another man while he sat alone like a fool. I pulled out my phone and opened the camera app. I want to see for myself. Sierra nodded, her expression grim. Follow me. We walked through the restaurant together, past the happy couples and intimate conversations. Sierra moved with purpose, her server's uniform giving her access to areas where I'd never be allowed. As we approached the VIP section, I could hear laughter from behind the tinted glass. Vanna's laugh, bright and musical in a way I hadn't heard in months. Sierra produced a key card from her pocket. Staff access, she explained quietly. The room has a service entrance. She swiped the card, and the door opened silently. We stepped into a small service corridor that ran behind the VIP rooms. Through a one-way mirror, I could see into the private dining area. There they were. Vanna sat across from Derek Sloan, her hand resting on his arm as she leaned in to whisper something that made him laugh. The champagne bottle on their table was nearly empty, and their dinner plates had been pushed aside to make room for their clasped hands. Derek was a handsome man in his early 40s, with the kind of polished confidence that came from money and success. Tonight, he was looking at my wife like she was the most fascinating woman in the world, and Vanna was glowing under his attention. I raised my phone and started recording. The angle was perfect, capturing both their faces clearly. No ambiguity, no room for misinterpretation. Just my wife and her boss, intimate and comfortable in a way that spoke of familiarity, of an established relationship. How long has this been going on? I whispered to Sierra. Months, she replied, her voice tight with controlled anger. I started noticing the changes in Derek around Christmas. Working late, mysterious phone calls, new clothes, classic signs. I kept recording as Derek lifted Vanna's hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. She smiled and said something that made him lean closer, their faces inches apart. I hired a private investigator, Sierra continued. Got photos of them leaving hotels, entering his apartment, all the usual evidence. But Derek's smart. He's been careful about the paper trail. Until tonight, I said, watching as Derek refilled Vanna's champagne glass with practiced ease. Until tonight, she agreed. This is the first time they've been this public about it. I stopped recording and switched to the camera function, taking several clear photos. Then I opened my voice recording app and captured a few minutes of their conversation. It was mostly flirtation and inside jokes, but the intimacy in their voices was unmistakable. We should go, Sierra said after a few more minutes. They might notice if I'm away from my section too long. We slipped back through the service door and returned to the main restaurant. My table was exactly as I'd left it, my half-eaten salmon growing cold under the soft lighting. But everything else had changed. The comfortable illusion of my marriage had shattered, replaced by hard evidence and harder truths. Sierra walked me back to my table, her professional demeanor returning as other diners watched us pass. "What are you going to do?" she asked quietly. I looked at my phone, at the photos and videos that would change everything. Then I looked toward the VIP room, where my wife was celebrating something that clearly wasn't our anniversary. "I'm going to finish my dinner," I said. "And then I'm going to go home and think." Sierra nodded. "If you need anything else, evidence, testimony, whatever, you know where to find me." She walked away, leaving me alone with my cold salmon and my racing thoughts. I ate slowly, mechanically, while my mind processed what I'd seen. The betrayal was complete and undeniable. Vanna hadn't just missed our anniversary dinner. She'd actively chosen to spend it with another man. When I finished eating, I paid the bill and left a generous tip. As I walked past the VIP room, I could still hear their laughter echoing through the tinted glass. They sounded happy, carefree, like people who had nothing to hide and no one to answer to. That was about to change. I stepped out into the Los Angeles night, the warm air carrying the scent of jasmine and car exhaust. My phone felt heavy in my pocket, weighted down with the evidence that would reshape my life. For a moment, I considered going back inside, confronting them directly, making a scene that would satisfy the anger burning in my chest. But that would be emotional, impulsive, the kind of reaction that would give Vanna ammunition to use against me later. Instead, I walked to my car and sat in the driver's seat for a long moment, staring at the restaurant's elegant facade. Through the windows, I could see couples sharing dessert, celebrating anniversaries and birthdays, and all the small moments that made life worth living. I pulled out my phone and typed a single message. "I know where you are." I sent it to Vanna, then immediately opened my home security app and activated the smart locks. Every door, every window, every possible entry point sealed with the touch of a button. Let her try to explain this one when she came home to find herself locked out. Then I started the car and drove into the night, my mind already working on what came next. I'd spent years being the understanding husband, the patient partner, the man who put his wife's career ahead of his own needs. That man was gone. What remained was someone who understood systems, who knew how to find weaknesses and exploit them, who had just been given every reason to use those skills. Vanna had chosen Derek over our marriage. She'd made that choice publicly, in a place where it could be documented and verified. Now she was going to live with the consequences. I drove through the empty Los Angeles streets, my hands steady on the wheel despite the wine and adrenaline coursing through my system. The city looked different somehow, like I was seeing it through new eyes. The palm trees lining Sunset Boulevard cast strange shadows under the streetlights, and the late-night traffic felt more purposeful, more urgent. My phone buzzed twice during the drive home, but I ignored it. Whatever Vanna had to say could wait until I was ready to hear it. Our house sat in a quiet neighborhood in West Hollywood, a modest two-bedroom that we'd bought 3 years ago when Vanna's career started taking off. It was her dream home, modern, minimalist, with smart home features that I'd installed myself. Tonight, those features were going to work in my favor. I parked in the driveway and sat for a moment, looking at the house we'd shared, the life we'd built together. The motion sensor lights had activated when I pulled up, illuminating the front garden that Vana had spent weekends perfecting. Everything looked normal, peaceful, like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I went inside and immediately checked the security system. All locks engaged, all windows secured, all entry points monitored. The house was mine now, at least for tonight. My phone was buzzing constantly. 7 missed calls, 12 text messages, all from Vana. I scrolled through them, watching her panic escalate in real time. "Why aren't you answering?" "Marlo, what's going on?" "I'm locked out. Open the door." "This isn't funny. Let me in." "I can explain everything." That last one made me laugh, a sound that echoed strangely in the empty house. Explain everything. Like there was some innocent explanation for spending our anniversary in a private room with another man. I poured myself a scotch and settled into my home office, the room where I did most of my consulting work. The walls were lined with servers and monitors, the tools of my trade. I'd always been good with technology, good at making complex systems work together seamlessly. Tonight, I was going to put those skills to a different use. I started by uploading the photos and videos from the restaurant to a secure cloud server, making multiple backups. Then I began researching Derek Sloan, using every database and search tool at my disposal. What I found was interesting. Derek was married to Sierra, just as she'd said. They'd been together for 3 years, married for 2. He was a partner at Hartwell and Associates, the PR firm where Vana worked. His social media presence was carefully curated. Professional photos, corporate events, the occasional vacation shot with Sierra. But there were gaps, inconsistencies, posts about business trips that didn't match his company's public schedule, photos with timestamps that didn't align with his stated whereabouts. I dug deeper, cross-referencing credit card records that I probably shouldn't have been able to access but could, thanks to a security consulting job I'd done for a financial services company. The patterns were clear once you knew what to look for. Hotel charges on nights when he claimed to be working late, restaurant bills for 2 when Sierra was out of town, a paper trail of deception that stretched back months. My phone rang, Vana, calling for the 9th time. I let it go to voicemail, then played back her message. "Marlo, please. I don't know what you think you saw, but you're wrong. Derek and I were having a business dinner. The VIP room was the only available table. Just let me in and we can talk about this like adults." Business dinner, in a private room, on our anniversary, while she texted me that she couldn't leave work. I saved the voicemail and continued my research. Sierra had been right about Derek being careful, but everyone made mistakes. I found hotel receipts, restaurant charges, even a jewelry purchase from last month that definitely hadn't been for his wife. Sierra's social media showed no new jewelry, and the purchase was for a necklace I'd seen Vana wearing just last week. By 2 in the morning, I had a complete picture. The affair had been going on for at least 6 months, possibly longer. They'd been using company resources to fund their relationship. Business dinners that were actually dates, conference rooms booked for private meetings, travel expenses that didn't match any legitimate business purpose. That last part was particularly interesting. Using company funds for personal expenses was a serious violation of corporate policy, potentially even criminal depending on the amounts involved. I compiled everything into a detailed report, complete with timestamps, receipts, and photographic evidence. It read like a case study in corporate misconduct and personal betrayal. My phone had finally stopped buzzing. Vana's last text, sent 20 minutes ago, was different in tone from the others. "Fine, I'll stay at Nadia's tonight. But we're going to talk about this tomorrow, and you're going to listen to what I have to say." Nadia was Vana's best friend and biggest enabler, the kind of woman who thought marriage was an outdated institution, and encouraged her friends to explore their options. If Vanna was staying there, she was already building her defense, crafting the story she'd tell to make this my fault somehow. I finished my scotch and went to bed, but sleep wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Vanna's face in that VIP room, glowing with happiness I hadn't seen in months. She'd looked alive in a way that had nothing to do with me, animated by a connection that made our marriage seem like a pale shadow. The next morning, I woke to 17 new messages and 4 voicemails. Vanna had been busy, cycling through anger, bargaining, and what appeared to be the early stages of panic. I ignored them all and made coffee, then sat down to review my evidence one more time. Everything was solid, verifiable, legally obtained. The photos were clear, the financial records were damning, and the timeline was airtight. But I needed more than evidence. I needed leverage. I called Sierra at 10 a.m., reaching her at home on her day off. "I was wondering when you'd call," she said without preamble. "How bad is it?" "Worse than you know," I replied. "Can we meet? I have some things to show you, and I think we can help each other." We arranged to meet at a coffee shop in Santa Monica, neutral territory, where neither Derek nor Vanna would think to look for us. Sierra arrived first, looking tired but determined. She'd traded her server uniform for jeans and a simple blouse, but she was still striking enough to turn heads as she walked to my table. "You look like you didn't sleep," she said, sitting down across from me. "Neither did you." She smiled grimly. "Derek didn't come home last night. First time in 3 years of marriage. I guess he figured the secret was out, so why bother pretending?" I showed her the evidence I'd compiled, watching her face grow harder with each revelation. The hotel receipts hit her particularly hard. She recognized several of the dates as nights when Derek had claimed to be working late. 6 months, she said finally, maybe longer. "At least 6 months, I confirmed, and they've been using company resources to fund it. That's the angle we can use." Sierra looked up from the papers. "What do you mean?" "Derek's a partner at the firm. He has fiduciary responsibilities, obligations to the other partners and shareholders. Using company funds for personal expenses is a serious breach of those obligations, the kind of thing that could get him fired, sued, maybe even criminally charged. And Vanna? She's complicit, knew about the misuse of funds, participated in it, benefited from it. At minimum, she'd be fired. At worst, she could face charges too." Sierra leaned back in her chair, processing the implications. "You want to destroy them." "I want justice," I corrected. "They made their choices. They can live with the consequences." "What do you need from me?" "Access. You work at the restaurant, you see things, you hear things. Derek probably thinks you're just the help, someone beneath his notice. That makes you invisible, and invisible people see everything." She nodded slowly. "I can get you more evidence. Receipts, reservation records, maybe even recordings if I can get access to the security system. Be careful. Don't do anything that could get you in legal trouble." "What about you? What are you going to do?" I looked out the coffee shop window at the Santa Monica Pier, where tourists and locals were enjoying the California sunshine. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that 2 marriages were dissolving in a coffee shop a few blocks away. "I'm going to file a formal complaint with Derek's firm. Present the evidence, let them conduct their own investigation. Corporate lawyers are very thorough when it comes to potential liability issues. That could take weeks. Then we make sure they have all the evidence they need to act quickly." Sierra extended her hand across the table. "Partners?" I shook it, feeling the calluses from her restaurant work, the strength in her grip. "Partners." We spent the next hour planning our approach. Sierra would continue gathering evidence from her position at the restaurant, while I would prepare the formal complaint and supporting documentation. We exchanged phone numbers and agreed to meet again in 2 days. As I drove home, my phone started buzzing again. Vanna, right on schedule. I let it ring, then played back her voicemail. "Marlo, this is ridiculous. You can't keep me locked out of my own house forever. I'm coming by this afternoon, and we're going to settle this like adults. I don't know what you think you saw last night, but you're completely wrong about Derek and me. Still lying. Still treating me like I was stupid enough to believe whatever story she'd concocted. I spent the afternoon preparing my complaint to Hartwell and Associates. It was a masterpiece of technical writing, laying out the evidence in clear, logical progression. Financial records, photographic evidence, witness statements, timeline analysis, everything a corporate investigation would need to reach the obvious conclusion. At 4 p.m., I heard a car in the driveway. Through the window, I watched Vanna get out of her BMW, her face set in determined lines. She was dressed for battle in her best business suit, armor for the confrontation she thought was coming. She tried her key first, then the smart lock app on her phone. When neither worked, she rang the doorbell, then pounded on the door. "Marlo, open this door right now!" I walked to the front hallway but didn't open the door. "We can talk through the door." "This is insane. Let me in." "Tell me about your business dinner last night." Silence. Then, "What?" "Your business dinner with Derek, in the VIP room, while I sat alone on our anniversary." More silence, longer this time. I could practically hear her recalibrating, adjusting her story to account for what I might know. "Someone saw us," she said finally. "And they told you." "Someone took pictures," I corrected. "High-definition pictures, and video, and audio recordings." The silence stretched so long I thought she might have left. Then I heard her voice, smaller now, less certain. "Marlo, please, let me in so we can talk about this properly." "No. What do you want from me?" "The truth, all of it. How long, how often, how much of our marriage has been a lie?" "It's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is." Another long pause. When she spoke again, her voice had changed completely. The anger was gone, replaced by something that sounded almost like relief. 6 months, she said quietly. "It started 6 months ago." "Started how?" "A conference in San Francisco. We were both there, Derek and I. We had drinks after the meetings, and one thing led to another." "And you decided to continue it?" "It wasn't supposed to be serious, it was just excitement, something different, something that made me feel alive again." "And our marriage? What did that make you feel?" "Safe," she said, so quietly I almost missed it. "Comfortable, predictable." The word hit me like a physical blow. Predictable. That's what 5 years of marriage had become to her. Something predictable, boring, insufficient. "So you kept both," I said. "The safe marriage and the exciting affair?" "I never meant to hurt you." "But you did. Every day for 6 months you looked me in the eye and lied to me." "Marlo, please, I filed a complaint with your company this afternoon, Derek's company, about the misuse of corporate funds, the ethical violations, the breach of fiduciary duty." The silence was complete now. No traffic noise, no birds, no sound at all except my own heartbeat. "You what?" she whispered. "Hotel receipts, restaurant bills, travel expenses, jewelry purchases, all on the company account, all for personal use. That's embezzlement, Vanna. That's a crime." "You can't do this." "I already did. The complaint was filed at 3 p.m. By now, the partners are reviewing the evidence. By tomorrow morning, there'll be an investigation. By the end of the week, you'll both be unemployed." "Marlo, stop this. Please, we can work this out." "No," I said, my voice steady and calm. "We can't. You made your choice 6 months ago. Now you get to live with it." I walked away from the door, leaving her standing on the porch. A few minutes later, I heard her car start and drive away. That evening, Sierra called with an update. "Derek came into the restaurant tonight," she said. "He looked panicked, kept checking his phone, making calls. I think your complaint is already having an effect." "Good. The faster this moves, the better." "There's something else. I overheard him talking to someone on the phone. He mentioned hiring a lawyer, Something about damage control. Let him hire all the lawyers he wants. The evidence speaks for itself. Marlowe, Sierra said, her voice careful. Are you sure about this? Once this gets started, there's no going back. I looked around the empty house, at the photos of Vanna and me that still lined the walls, at the life we'd built together that had turned out to be a lie. There's already no going back, I said. They made sure of that. After I hung up, I poured another scotch and sat in my office, surrounded by the tools of my trade. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. Tonight, I was content to sit in the silence, planning the systematic dismantling of the life that had betrayed me. Vanna had called me predictable. She was about to learn just how unpredictable a predictable man could be when he had nothing left to lose. The call came at 7 a.m. sharp, just as I was finishing my first cup of coffee. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was local. Mr. Trasker, this is Jennifer Walsh, senior partner at Hartwell & Associates. I'd like to schedule a meeting to discuss the complaint you filed yesterday. Her voice was crisp, professional, with the kind of authority that came from years of handling corporate crises. I'd done my research on the firm's partners, and Jennifer Walsh was exactly who I'd hoped would handle this: thorough, ruthless, and absolutely committed to protecting the firm's reputation. I'm available at your convenience, I said. Can you be here at 10 a.m., and please bring any additional evidence you might have? I'll be there. The Hartwell & Associates building was a gleaming tower of glass and steel in Century City, the kind of place where million-dollar deals were made and careers were destroyed with equal efficiency. I arrived 15 minutes early, dressed in my best suit and carrying a briefcase full of evidence that would reshape 2 lives before lunch. Jennifer Walsh's office was on the 32nd floor, with panoramic views of Los Angeles spreading out in all directions. She was a woman in her 50s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, with the kind of presence that made junior executives tremble. Today, she was focused entirely on me. Mr. Trasker, she said, gesturing to a chair across from her desk. Thank you for coming in. I've reviewed your complaint and I have to say it's quite thorough. I'm a technical consultant. Thoroughness is part of the job. Indeed. Before we proceed, I need to ask, are you prepared to testify to the accuracy of this information under oath, if necessary? Absolutely. She nodded, making a note on her legal pad. Good. Now I've already begun a preliminary investigation based on your complaint. Our IT department has pulled Derek's expense reports for the past year, and our accounting team is reviewing all charges to his corporate credit card. And what have you found? Patterns consistent with your allegations. Hotel charges that don't correspond to business travel, restaurant expenses for 2 when he should have been dining alone, purchases that appear to be personal in nature. She pulled out a thick folder and spread several documents across her desk. These are just from the past 3 months. We estimate the total misappropriation at somewhere between $50,000 and $75,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. $50,000. That was more than I'd made in some years, money that Derek had casually spent on his affair with my wife. There's more, Jennifer continued. We found evidence that Derek has been booking conference rooms for personal meetings, using company resources for non-business communications, and falsifying travel reports to cover his activities. What about Vanna? Ms. Trasker is complicit in several of these violations. She attended the dinners, benefited from the hotel stays, and received gifts purchased with company funds. At minimum, she violated our ethics policy. At worst, she's an accessory to embezzlement. Jennifer leaned back in her chair, studying me with the intensity of a surgeon preparing for a complex operation. Mr. Trasker, I need to ask you directly. What outcome are you seeking here? It was a fair question, and one I'd been asking myself since filing the complaint. What did I want? Justice? Revenge? Simple acknowledgement that what they'd done was wrong? I want them held accountable, I said finally. They made choices, and those choices had consequences. I want those consequences to be real. Derek will be terminated, effective immediately. His partnership stake will be forfeited, and we'll be pursuing civil action to recover the misappropriated funds. Depending on the final audit results, we may also file criminal charges. And Vanna? Also terminated. She'll be blacklisted from the industry. I'll make sure of that personally. No reputable PR firm in Los Angeles will hire her after this. Jennifer gathered the documents back into their folder, her movements precise and efficient. There is one more thing. Derek has requested a meeting with you. What kind of meeting? He wants to apologize, make amends. He seems to think he can convince you to withdraw your complaint. The idea was almost laughable. Derek thought he could charm his way out of this, use his smooth PR skills to manipulate me into backing down. He still saw me as the harmless husband, the predictable man who could be managed and controlled. Set it up, I said. I'd like to hear what he has to say. Jennifer raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? There's no legal requirement for you to meet with him. I'm sure. She made another note. Very well. I'll arrange for tomorrow afternoon, here in our offices. And Mr. Trasker? Thank you. What Derek did was a serious breach of trust, both personally and professionally. The firm appreciates your bringing this to our attention. I left the Hartwell building feeling lighter than I had in months. The wheels of justice were turning, slowly but inevitably. By this time tomorrow, Derek would be unemployed and facing potential criminal charges. Vanna would be out of work and unemployable in her chosen field. My phone buzzed as I reached my car. A text from Vanna. We need to talk, please. I deleted the message without responding. That afternoon, I met Sierra at the same coffee shop in Santa Monica. She looked tired, but determined, with the kind of focused energy that comes from having a clear purpose. Derek didn't come home again last night, she said without preamble. I think he's staying at a hotel, probably trying to figure out damage control. There is no damage control. The investigation is already underway. What happens now? I told her about my meeting with Jennifer Walsh, watching her face cycle through surprise, satisfaction, and something that might have been relief. $75,000, she repeated. He spent $75,000 on her. Company money, which makes it embezzlement. Good. Her voice was hard as diamond. I hope they prosecute him to the full extent of the law. There's something else. Derek wants to meet with me tomorrow. Apologize. Try to make amends. Sierra laughed, a sound with no humor in it. He thinks he can talk his way out of this. Classic Derek. He's never met a problem he couldn't solve with the right words and enough charm. He's about to learn otherwise. We spent the next hour going over the evidence Sierra had gathered from the restaurant. She'd managed to get copies of all their reservation records, receipts from their private dinners, even some security footage from the parking lot showing them arriving and leaving together. This is perfect, I said, reviewing the documents. It establishes a clear pattern of behavior. There's more. I talked to some of the other servers, and they remember Derek and Vanna. They've been coming in regularly for months, always requesting the VIP room, always paying with Derek's corporate card. Witnesses. Multiple witnesses, and they're all willing to testify if it comes to that. As we prepared to leave, Sierra reached across the table and touched my hand. Marlo, I want you to know. What you're doing, it takes courage. A lot of people would have just walked away, tried to pretend it never happened. Walking away was never an option. Still, thank you. For both of us. That evening, my phone rang constantly. Vanna calling every hour on the hour, leaving increasingly desperate voicemails. I listened to them all, hearing her progression from anger to bargaining to what sounded like the early stages of panic. Marlo, please call me back. We can fix this. I know you're angry, but destroying Derek won't bring us back together. Think about what you're doing. This will hurt innocent people. Please, I'm begging you. Call me back. I saved all the voicemails but didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. The next morning brought news that Derek had been escorted from the Hartwell building by security, his personal effects packed into boxes, and his access to all company systems revoked. The story was already spreading through the Los Angeles PR community, a cautionary tale about mixing business with pleasure. At 2 p.m., I arrived at the Hartwell building for my meeting with Derek. Jennifer Walsh met me in the lobby and escorted me to a conference room on the 20th floor. "He's been here for an hour," she said quietly, pacing, checking his phone, looking like a man who's finally realized the gravity of his situation. "Good. I'll be monitoring from the next room. If you need anything, just press the call button on the conference table." Derek was standing by the window when I entered, looking out at the city where his career had just ended. He was still handsome, still polished, but there was something deflated about him now, like a balloon slowly losing air. He turned when he heard me come in, and I saw the exact moment he tried to activate his charm. The smile, the confident posture, the extended hand, all the tools that had probably served him well in countless business meetings. "Marlo," he said, as if we were old friends meeting for lunch. "Thank you for agreeing to see me." I didn't shake his hand. Instead, I took a seat at the conference table and waited for him to join me. "I suppose you know why I wanted to meet?" he continued, settling into a chair across from me. "Enlighten me." His smile faltered slightly. "I want to apologize. What happened between Vanna and me, it was wrong. I take full responsibility." "Do you?" "Absolutely. I was in a position of authority, and I abused that position. I let my personal feelings cloud my professional judgment." It was a carefully crafted apology, the kind of thing his PR training had taught him to deliver. Hit the right notes, accept responsibility without admitting criminal wrongdoing, express remorse without actually feeling it. "And the money?" I asked. "What money?" "The $75,000 in company funds you spent on your affair." Derek's composure cracked slightly. "Those were legitimate business expenses. Hotel rooms when you weren't traveling on business? Jewelry purchases? Private dinners in VIP rooms? Entertainment expenses? Client development?" "Vanna isn't a client. She's a valuable employee. Team building is an important part of—" "Stop." I held up a hand. "Just stop. We both know what this was. You spent company money to finance your affair with my wife. That's embezzlement, Derek. That's a crime." He leaned forward, his salesman instincts taking over. "Marlo, listen to me. I know you're hurt, and you have every right to be. But destroying my career won't fix your marriage." "My marriage is over. Has been for 6 months, apparently." "It doesn't have to be. Vanna loves you. What we had, it was just physical, a mistake. She wants to come home, wants to work things out." "She told you that?" "She's been calling me constantly, crying, begging me to fix this somehow. She says she'll do anything to get you back." I studied his face, looking for tells, signs of deception. But Derek was a professional liar, trained in the art of making people believe what he wanted them to believe. "What are you proposing?" I asked. His eyes lit up, sensing an opening. "I resign from the firm quietly, take responsibility for the expense account irregularities, make full restitution. In exchange, you withdraw your complaint and give Vanna a chance to explain." "And you?" "I disappear. Leave Los Angeles, start over somewhere else. You'll never see me again." It was a reasonable offer, the kind of compromise that might have appealed to the old Marlo. The understanding husband who wanted to preserve his marriage above all else. But the old Marlo hadn't been humiliated on his anniversary. The old Marlo hadn't discovered his wife's betrayal through a stranger's kindness. "No," I said simply. Derek's smile disappeared entirely. "No? You made your choices, both of you. Now you get to live with the consequences. Marlo, be reasonable." "I am being reasonable. You committed a crime, multiple crimes. You should face the consequences of those crimes. Think about Vanna. she'll lose everything. She lost everything the moment she chose you over our marriage. Derek's mask slipped completely now, revealing the desperate man underneath. You're making a mistake. Destroying me won't make you feel better. Maybe not. But it will make sure you never do this to anyone else. I stood up, preparing to leave. Derek jumped up as well, his composure completely gone. You self-righteous bastard, he snarled. You think you're so much better than me? Your wife came to me because you weren't enough for her. You weren't exciting enough, successful enough, man enough to keep her interested. You're probably right, I said calmly. But I was honest enough not to steal $75,000 to finance an affair. I walked toward the door, leaving Derek standing by the conference table, his career in ruins and his future uncertain. This isn't over, he called after me. I paused at the door and looked back at him. Yes, it is. As I left the building, my phone buzzed with a text from Sierra. How did it go? Exactly as expected, I replied. He's finished. That evening, the local news ran a story about a prominent PR executive being terminated for financial misconduct. They didn't name Derek, but anyone in the industry would know who they were talking about. His reputation was destroyed, his career over, his future a series of legal battles and financial ruin. Vanna called that night, sobbing into the phone. He told me what you did, she said through her tears. How could you be so cruel? I told the truth. Everything else was just consequences. I lost my job, Marlo. I'm blacklisted. No one will hire me. Then you'll have to find a new career. Please, she whispered. Can't we try to work this out? Can't we try to save our marriage? I looked around the empty house, at the photos of our life together, at the dreams we'd shared, and the future we'd planned. There's nothing left to save, I said, and hung up the phone. Outside, Los Angeles glittered in the darkness, a city of dreams and broken promises. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new complications, new consequences to navigate. But tonight, justice felt like enough. 3 days after Derek's termination, the story exploded across the Los Angeles media landscape like a wildfire in dry brush. Someone had leaked the details to a gossip blogger who specialized in corporate scandals, and by Thursday morning, Derek's name and photo were plastered across entertainment websites and business journals. PR executive embezzles thousands for office affair, read the headline in the Los Angeles Business Tribune. The article was thorough, detailing the investigation, the evidence, and the spectacular fall from grace of one of the city's most prominent publicity professionals. I was drinking my morning coffee when Sierra called, her voice tight with excitement. Have you seen the news? Just reading it now. They're calling it the biggest corporate scandal of the year. Derek's picture is everywhere. I scrolled through the articles on my tablet, watching Derek's reputation disintegrate in real time. The comments sections were particularly brutal. Former colleagues, competitors, and clients all sharing their own stories of Derek's arrogance and misconduct. There's more, Sierra continued. I heard from a friend who works at another PR firm. Apparently Derek's been calling around, trying to find someone who'll hire him. No one will even take his calls. Good. What about Vanna? Same story. The industry is small, and word travels fast. She's toxic now, associated with the scandal. Even if someone wanted to take a chance on her, they couldn't risk the bad publicity. After Sierra hung up, I sat in my kitchen reading every article, every comment, every analysis of Derek's downfall. The coverage was more extensive than I'd expected, but then again, Los Angeles thrived on scandal, especially when it involved powerful people brought low by their own arrogance. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You destroyed my life. I hope you're satisfied. Derek reaching out from whatever hole he'd crawled into. I blocked the number and deleted the message, but the harassment was just beginning. Over the next few days, I received dozens of calls from blocked numbers, angry voicemails, and threatening texts. Derek was spiraling, lashing out at the man he blamed for his downfall. I saved everything, documenting his increasingly unhinged behavior for potential legal action. Vana was handling things differently. Instead of anger, she'd chosen manipulation, showing up at my office building, calling my clients, trying to turn our mutual friends against me. She was spinning a story of abuse and revenge, painting herself as the victim of a vindictive husband who'd destroyed her career over a minor indiscretion. "Mr. Trasker," my assistant knocked on my office door. "There's a woman here to see you. She says she's your wife." I looked through the window and saw Vanna in the lobby, dressed in her most conservative business suit, playing the role of the wronged woman. She'd always been good at reading people, knowing exactly what image to project to get what she wanted. "Tell her I'm in meetings all day." She says she'll wait. "Then call security and have her removed from the building." My assistant looked uncomfortable but nodded. 5 minutes later, I watched through the window as 2 security guards escorted Vanna from the lobby. She went quietly, maintaining her dignity, but I could see the fury in her eyes. That afternoon, I received a call from my lawyer. "Marlowe, we need to talk. Vanna's filed for divorce, and she's making some serious allegations." "What kind of allegations?" "Emotional abuse, financial manipulation, deliberate destruction of her career. She's asking for alimony, half the house, and punitive damages for what she's calling malicious prosecution." I almost laughed. After 6 months of lying and cheating, after using company funds to finance her affair, Vanna was trying to position herself as the victim. Can she make any of it stick? Probably not, but she can make your life miserable trying. Divorce litigation can drag on for years, especially when one party is motivated by revenge rather than resolution. Set up a meeting. I want to hear what she has to say. The meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday at my lawyer's office in Beverly Hills. I arrived early, wanting to observe Vanna's entrance, to see what persona she'd chosen for this performance. She came in with her own attorney, a sharp-looking woman in her 40s, who specialized in high-conflict divorces. Vanna had traded her conservative suit for something more vulnerable. A simple dress, minimal makeup, the image of a woman brought low by circumstances beyond her control. "Marlowe," she said softly as she took her seat across the conference table. "Thank you for agreeing to meet." Her lawyer, Patricia Chen, opened a folder and spread several documents across the table. "Mr. Trasker, my client is prepared to offer you a reasonable settlement. She's asking for spousal support of $4,000 per month for 3 years, half the equity in your shared residence, and her legal fees." "In exchange for what?" "A quiet divorce, no contested proceedings, no public testimony about the circumstances that led to the breakdown of your marriage." It was blackmail, politely dressed in legal language. Pay up, or Vanna would drag our private business through the courts, generating more headlines and more embarrassment. "And if I refuse?" Patricia smiled coldly. "Then we proceed to trial. My client is prepared to testify about your controlling behavior, your invasion of her privacy, your deliberate sabotage of her career. The media attention could be quite damaging to your consulting business." I looked across the table at Vanna, who was playing her role perfectly. The wounded wife, forced to defend herself against an abusive husband. It was a compelling performance, one that might even work with a sympathetic judge. "I need to think about it," I said. "Of course. Take all the time you need." As we prepared to leave, Vanna caught my arm. "Marlowe, this doesn't have to be ugly. We can both walk away with our dignity intact." "Like you walked away from our marriage with your dignity intact?" Her mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the calculating woman underneath. "I made a mistake, but you made it public. You humiliated me in front of the entire industry. You humiliated yourself. I just documented it." That evening, I called Sierra to update her on the divorce proceedings. "She's trying to shake you down," Sierra said after I explained Vanna's offer. "Basically, yes." What are you going to do? Fight it. All of it. I'm not paying her a penny for the privilege of ending our marriage. That could get expensive. Not as expensive as rewarding her for 6 months of lying and cheating. Sierra was quiet for a moment. There's something I need to tell you. About Derek. What about him? He's been calling me, trying to get me to talk to you, convince you to back down on the criminal charges. And I told him to go to hell, but Marlo, he's desperate, really desperate. I'm worried he might do something stupid. Like what? I don't know, but desperate people make bad choices. She was right to be concerned. Derek's texts and voicemails had been escalating in tone, becoming more threatening, more unhinged. A man who'd lost everything had nothing left to lose, and that made him dangerous. I'll be careful, I promised. Maybe you should consider a restraining order. Maybe I should. After we hung up, I sat in my empty house, thinking about the choices that had led us all to this point. 6 months ago, we'd been 2 married couples living ordinary lives in Los Angeles. Now, we were 4 people locked in a battle that would leave scars on everyone involved. My phone buzzed with another text from an unknown number. This isn't over. You'll pay for what you've done. I forwarded the message to my lawyer and added it to the growing file of Derek's harassment. Tomorrow, I would file for a restraining order. Tonight, I would sleep with the security system armed and my phone within reach. The war Vanna and Derek had started was far from over, but I was no longer the predictable man they thought they could manipulate and control. I was someone who understood that sometimes the only way to win was to be willing to lose everything, and I had already lost the only thing that mattered. The next morning brought news that would change everything. Sierra called at 6 a.m., her voice shaking with excitement and fear. Derek's been arrested. What? Last night. He broke into the restaurant, tried to steal the security footage and reservation records. The alarm company called the police and they caught him in the act. Is he in jail? For now. But Marlo, there's more. When they searched him, they found a gun. The words hit me like ice water. A gun. Derek had been carrying a weapon, planning... What? To intimidate me? To hurt me? To eliminate the problem I represented? Are you okay? I asked. I'm fine. Scared, but fine. The police want to talk to both of us about the harassment, the threats, everything. I'll call my lawyer and meet you at the station. As I drove to the police station, I realized that Derek's arrest had changed the entire dynamic of our conflict. This was no longer about a divorce settlement or corporate scandal. This was about a desperate man who'd been willing to use violence to solve his problems. The restraining order I'd been considering was now a necessity. The criminal charges against Derek would be expanded to include burglary, weapons violations, and stalking. And Vanna's position as the wronged woman would become much harder to maintain when her lover was facing serious felony charges. By the time I reached the police station, Derek's mugshot was already circulating on social media. The fallen PR executive caught breaking into a restaurant with a loaded weapon. The story would dominate the news cycle for days, ensuring that his name would be permanently associated with scandal and violence. Justice, I reflected, sometimes came in unexpected forms. Derek had destroyed himself more thoroughly than I ever could have managed. All I'd done was provide the initial push. Now it was time to finish what he'd started. Derek's arrest made the front page of the Los Angeles Times. The photograph was devastating. A disheveled man in an expensive suit, handcuffed, and looking like his world had collapsed. Which, of course, it had. Former PR executive arrested in restaurant burglary, read the headline, but the subtext was clear to anyone who'd been following the story. This wasn't just a burglary. This was the final act of a man who'd lost everything and was willing to risk what little remained on a desperate gamble. I was reading the article over breakfast when my lawyer called. Have you seen the news? Just reading it now. This changes everything. Derek's arrest undermines any sympathy Vanna might have generated. A jury isn't going to be sympathetic to the wife of a man who was carrying a loaded weapon. Derek wasn't her husband. In the public mind, they're connected. His actions reflect on her judgment, her character, her credibility. My lawyer was right. Vanna's carefully constructed narrative of victimhood would be much harder to maintain now that her lover was facing serious felony charges. The woman who claimed to be the victim of an abusive husband would have to explain why she'd chosen to have an affair with a man who turned to violence when cornered. What's our next move? We wait. Let Derek's legal troubles play out in the media. Every day he spends in jail is another day the story stays in the news. Another day, Vanna's reputation takes a beating. That afternoon, I met Sierra at the police station to give our statements about Derek's harassment campaign. Detective Maria Santos was a no-nonsense woman in her 40s who'd clearly dealt with her share of domestic violence and stalking cases. Mr. Trasker, I've reviewed the text messages and voicemails you provided. This represents a clear pattern of escalating threats. How serious are the charges against Derek? Burglary, possession of a weapon during the commission of a felony, stalking, harassment. He's looking at significant prison time, especially given his lack of cooperation. Lack of cooperation? He's claiming the break-in was justified, that he was trying to recover evidence that would prove his innocence in the embezzlement case. His lawyer is having a hard time explaining why that required a loaded pistol. Sierra and I spent 2 hours going through Derek's harassment campaign, documenting every threatening message, every unwanted contact, every escalation in his behavior. By the time we finished, Detective Santos had enough evidence to ensure Derek would remain in custody pending trial. One more thing, the detective said, as we prepared to leave. Has Derek's wife contacted either of you? Sierra and I exchanged glances. Vanna isn't Derek's wife, I said. She's my wife. Derek is married to Sierra. Detective Santos looked confused. I'm sorry, I thought. The woman who came to see Derek yesterday, she identified herself as his wife. What woman? Blonde, well-dressed, said her name was Vanna Sloan. She spent an hour with Derek in the interview room. The news hit me like a physical blow. Vanna had visited Derek in jail, identifying herself as his wife. Not his girlfriend, not his colleague, but his wife. The woman who'd been begging me to save our marriage had publicly claimed another man as her husband. Did she post bail? Sierra asked, her voice tight. No, bail was denied, but she did hire him a very expensive lawyer. As we left the police station, Sierra was unusually quiet. Finally, she spoke. She's really committed to him, isn't she? Even after everything that's happened? Apparently so. What does that mean for your divorce? I thought about Vanna's performance in my lawyer's office, her claims of victimhood, her demands for alimony and support. All of it undermined by her decision to stand by Derek even after his arrest. It means she's made her choice. Again. That evening, I called my lawyer with an update. She visited him in jail and identified herself as his wife. That's what the detective said. Perfect. That gives us everything we need to counter her abuse allegations. A woman claiming to be the victim of an abusive husband doesn't immediately run to comfort her lover when he's arrested. So what's our strategy? We go on the offensive, file a countersuit alleging adultery, abandonment, and fraud, demand that she pay your legal fees, make her defend every aspect of her conduct over the past 6 months. Won't that drag things out? Not necessarily. Once Vanna realizes she has no leverage, she'll be motivated to settle quickly. The longer this stays in the news, the more damage it does to whatever reputation she has left. 2 days later, Vanna's lawyer called to request another meeting. This time, the tone was very different. My client is prepared to accept a no-fault divorce with no financial settlement, Patricia Chen said without preamble. What changed her mind? The media attention, the association with Derek's criminal case, She wants to move on with her life. It was a complete capitulation. No alimony, no property settlement, no attempt to blame me for the marriage's failure. Vana had finally realized that her position was untenable, that every day she spent fighting me was another day the scandal stayed in the headlines. "I'll need that in writing," my lawyer said. "Of course, we can have the papers drawn up by tomorrow." As we prepared to leave, Patricia Chen made one final request. My client would like 5 minutes to speak with Mr. Trasker privately. I looked at my lawyer, who shrugged. "It's your call." 5 minutes. Vanna was waiting in a smaller conference room, looking nothing like the confident woman I'd married. The scandal had aged her, worn her down, stripped away the polished veneer that had made her so effective in the PR world. "Thank you for seeing me," she said quietly. "You have 5 minutes. I want you to know that I never meant for any of this to happen. The affair, Derek's arrest, the media circus. None of it was supposed to go this far. But it did. Yes, it did. And I take responsibility for my part in it." She paused, seeming to gather herself for what came next. "I also want you to know that what Derek and I had, it was real. Not just physical, not just excitement. I loved him, Marlo, I still do. The admission should have hurt, but it didn't. If anything, it was a relief to finally hear her tell the truth." "Then why didn't you just ask for a divorce 6 months ago?" "Because I was scared. Scared of being alone, scared of starting over, scared of admitting that our marriage wasn't working. So you chose to lie instead." "I chose to try to have both. The security of our marriage and the excitement of something new. It was selfish and stupid, and I'm sorry." "Are you? Or are you just sorry you got caught?" She considered the question seriously. "Both, I think. I'm sorry I hurt you, and I'm sorry I got caught. I'm not proud of that, but it's honest." I appreciated the honesty, even if it came 6 months too late. "What will you do now?" I asked. "Leave Los Angeles, start over somewhere else. Derek will be in prison for years, but I'll wait for him." "And your career?" "Over, at least in PR. Maybe I'll teach, or write, or find something completely different." She stood up, smoothing her skirt with hands that trembled slightly. "For what it's worth, Marlo, you were a good husband. Better than I deserved. I hope you find someone who appreciates that. Goodbye, Vanna." "Goodbye." She walked out of my life as quietly as she'd entered it 5 years earlier, leaving behind only the wreckage of our marriage and the lessons learned from its destruction. That evening I sat in my home office, surrounded by the evidence of the past month's battles. Photos, documents, legal briefs, news articles, the complete record of how 2 marriages had dissolved in spectacular fashion. My phone rang. Sierra. "I heard about the settlement. Congratulations." "Thank you." "How do you feel?" It was a good question. How did I feel? Vindicated? Satisfied? Empty? "Relieved," I said finally. "It's over." "Not quite. Derek's trial is still coming. That's not my fight anymore. The criminal justice system can handle Derek from here." "And us? What happens to us?" Another good question. Sierra and I had been brought together by betrayal, united by a common enemy. With that enemy defeated, what was left? "I don't know," I admitted. "What do you want to happen?" "I'd like to find out who we are when we're not plotting revenge." That sounds like a good place to start. 3 weeks later, the divorce was final. Vanna had left Los Angeles as promised, relocating to Portland where she'd found work as a freelance writer. Derek was still in jail, awaiting trial on multiple felony charges. The media had moved on to other scandals, other stories of powerful people brought low by their own arrogance. I kept the house, the cars, and most of our shared assets. Vanna had taken only her personal belongings and a few pieces of furniture that had belonged to her family. It was a clean break, as final as such things could be. Sierra and I had been dating for 2 weeks, taking things slowly, learning each other outside the context of shared betrayal. She was funny, intelligent, and surprisingly optimistic for someone who'd been through what we'd both experienced. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked one evening as we sat on my patio, watching the Los Angeles sunset. "Which part?" "All of it. The investigation, the media attention, destroying their careers." I thought about it seriously. Did I regret bringing Derek and Vanna's affair to light? Did I regret the consequences that had followed? "No," I said finally. "They made their choices. I just made sure those choices had real consequences. Even knowing how much pain it caused? They caused the pain when they decided to lie and cheat and steal. I just made it visible." Sierra nodded, understanding. We'd both learned hard lessons about trust, about consequences, about the price of betrayal. "What happens now?" she asked. I looked out at the city lights beginning to twinkle in the gathering darkness, at the vast expanse of Los Angeles spreading out below us. Somewhere out there, Vanna was building a new life. Derek was sitting in a jail cell, contemplating the choices that had brought him there. And I was here, free from the lies that had defined my marriage, ready to discover what came next. Now we find out what happens when two people tell each other the truth from the beginning. Sierra smiled and took my hand. "That sounds like a good plan." In the distance, the city hummed with life and possibility. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to build something real and lasting. But tonight, the truth was enough. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I received an unexpected phone call that would bring the entire saga full circle. Detective Santos was on the line, her voice carrying the weight of significant news. "Mr. Trasker, I wanted to update you on Derek Sloan's case. The trial concluded yesterday." I set down my coffee and focused entirely on her words. "What was the verdict?" "Guilty on all counts. Burglary, weapons charges, stalking, harassment. The judge sentenced him to 4 years in state prison, with the possibility of parole after 2. 4 years. It seemed both too much and too little for the destruction Derek had caused. But it was justice, of a sort. "There's something else," Detective Santos continued. "During the sentencing phase, Sloan made a statement. He blamed you for everything. His arrest, his conviction, the end of his career. He called you vindictive and obsessed." Sounds about right. The judge wasn't impressed. She told him that his problems were the direct result of his own choices, not yours. It was quite a rebuke. After the detective hung up, I sat in my kitchen thinking about the strange journey that had brought us all to this point. A year ago, I'd been a married man planning an anniversary dinner. Now Derek was in prison. Vanna had disappeared into obscurity in Portland, and I was building a new life with Sierra. The phone rang again. This time it was my lawyer. "Marlo, I have news about the civil case against Derek. The court has ordered him to pay full restitution for the embezzled funds, plus interest and penalties. It comes to about $90,000. Can he pay it?" "Not from prison, he can't. But the judgment will follow him for the rest of his life. Every asset he ever acquires, every paycheck he ever earns, will be subject to garnishment until the debt is satisfied." It was a fitting end to Derek's story. Even after serving his prison sentence, he would spend years paying for his crimes, both literally and figuratively. His name would forever be associated with scandal and corruption, making it nearly impossible for him to rebuild his career in public relations. That evening, Sierra and I had dinner at a small Italian restaurant in West Hollywood, far from the upscale establishments where this whole story had begun. She looked radiant in the soft candlelight, her auburn hair catching the glow as she laughed at something I'd said. "You're different tonight," she observed. "More relaxed." "Derek was sentenced today, 4 years in prison. How do you feel about that?" It was a question she asked often, helping me process the complex emotions that came with watching someone's life disintegrate as a consequence of their own actions. Like a chapter is finally closed, I said. For better or worse, it's finished. And Vana? I hadn't heard from my ex-wife since the day our divorce was finalized. According to mutual friends, she was working as a freelance writer in Portland, living quietly under her maiden name, waiting for Derek's release from prison. She made her choice. She's living with it. Sierra reached across the table and took my hand. We both are. Living with our choices, I mean. She was right. We'd all made choices over the past year, and those choices had led us to where we were now. Derek had chosen to embezzle money and carry a weapon. Vanna had chosen to have an affair and stand by her lover despite his crimes. Sierra had chosen to help me expose the truth, and I had chosen to fight rather than simply walk away. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we'd made different choices? Sierra asked. Sometimes, but I can't imagine any scenario where doing nothing would have been better. Even knowing the cost? I thought about the cost, the media attention, the legal battles, the destruction of careers and reputations, the pain inflicted on everyone involved, including innocent bystanders like Sierra. Even knowing the cost, I confirmed, some things are worth fighting for. Like what? Truth, justice, the principle that actions have consequences. Sierra smiled. You sound like a superhero. I'm just a man who got tired of being lied to. As we finished dinner, I reflected on how much my life had changed. The house felt different now, lighter somehow, freed from the weight of deception that had hung over it during the final months of my marriage. My consulting business was thriving, benefiting from the reputation for thoroughness and integrity I'd gained during the investigation. And Sierra had become not just a romantic partner, but a true companion, someone who understood the importance of honesty in all its forms. There's something I need to tell you, Sierra said as we walked to the car. My heart skipped a beat. After everything we'd been through, the phrase, "I need to tell you something," still triggered alarm bells. What is it? I got a job offer, a good one. Restaurant manager position at a high-end place in San Francisco. Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by concern. That's wonderful. Are you going to take it? I don't know. It would mean leaving Los Angeles, leaving you. We reached the car and stood facing each other in the parking lot, the weight of another life-changing decision hanging between us. What do you want to do? I asked. I want to take the job. It's everything I've been working toward. Real responsibility, good money, a chance to build something meaningful. Then you should take it. Just like that? Just like that. She studied my face in the dim light from the street lamps. You'd really let me go? I'd really support your decision. There's a difference. And us? What happens to us? It was a fair question, and one I'd been thinking about since she'd started looking for management positions. Our relationship had been forged in crisis, built on shared trauma and mutual support. Could it survive the transition to normal life, to separate careers and different cities? I don't know, I admitted. But I know that trying to hold you back would be the kind of selfish behavior that destroys relationships. Sierra stepped closer, her eyes bright with unshed tears. I love you for saying that. But you're still going to take the job. I'm still going to take the job. I pulled her into my arms, holding her close as the Los Angeles traffic hummed around us. Another ending, another beginning, another choice with consequences that would ripple through both our lives. When do you start? Next month. I'll need to give notice at the restaurant, find an apartment, make the transition. I'll help however I can. I know you will. That's who you are. We drove home in comfortable silence, both lost in our own thoughts about what came next. The past year had taught us both hard lessons about love, loyalty, and the courage required to build something real in a world full of deception and compromise. As we pulled into my driveway, Sierra turned to me with a smile that was equal parts sad and hopeful. You know, A year ago, I was just a waitress married to a man who was cheating on me. Now I'm a restaurant manager about to start a new life in a new city. And I was a man married to a woman who was cheating on me. Now I'm a man who knows the difference between love and convenience. We've both come a long way. Yes, we have. Inside the house, we made love with the intensity of people who knew their time together was limited. Afterward, we lay in bed talking about the future, about dreams and possibilities, and the strange paths that had brought us together. "Will you visit me in San Francisco?" Sierra asked. "As often as you'll have me. And if things work out, if the job is everything I hope it will be, then maybe I'll consider expanding my consulting business to the Bay Area." She smiled and kissed me softly. "I'd like that." So would I. The next morning, I woke to find Sierra already up, standing at the bedroom window looking out at the Los Angeles skyline. The morning light caught her hair, turning it to burnished copper, and I was struck by how beautiful she looked, how right she seemed in this moment. "Second thoughts?" I asked. "No. Just saying goodbye to the city where I met you. Los Angeles will still be here when you want to visit. And so will you, and so will I." She turned from the window and came back to bed, curling up against me with the easy intimacy we'd developed over the months of rebuilding our lives. "Marlo?" "Yes?" "Thank you. For everything. For believing me that night at the restaurant. For fighting back when it would have been easier to just walk away. For showing me what it looks like when someone refuses to accept lies and betrayal. Thank you for having the courage to tell me the truth when you could have just minded your own business. Do you think we'll make it? Long distance, different cities, separate lives?" I considered the question seriously. We'd survived betrayal, divorce, criminal trials, and media attention. Could we survive success and separation? "I think we have a better chance than most people," I said finally. "We know how to tell each other the truth. Even when it hurts? Especially when it hurts." 3 weeks later, I helped Sierra load her belongings into a moving truck bound for San Francisco. We'd spent her final days in Los Angeles visiting all the places that had become significant to us. The coffee shop where we'd planned our strategy, the police station where we'd given our statements, even the restaurant where it all began. The VIP room was still there, still available for private dinners and intimate celebrations, but it no longer held any power over us. It was just a room now, a place where other people would make their own choices and face their own consequences. As the moving truck pulled away from the curb, Sierra and I stood in my driveway holding each other, both of us crying a little at this latest ending and beginning. "I'll call you when I get there," she promised. "I'll be waiting. And Marlo? Don't wait too long to visit. San Francisco is beautiful in the fall. I'll be there before the leaves change." She kissed me one last time, then got in her car and drove away, following the moving truck north toward her new life. I watched until both vehicles disappeared around the corner, then went back inside to begin the process of adjusting to solitude once again. But this solitude was different from the loneliness I'd felt during the final months of my marriage. This was chosen, temporary, full of possibility rather than dread. Sierra and I had both learned that love without trust was worthless, but we'd also learned that trust without honesty was impossible. Whatever came next, we would face it with our eyes open and our hearts unguarded, ready to build something real on the foundation of hard-won truth. That evening, as I sat on my patio watching the sunset over Los Angeles, my phone rang. Sierra, calling from her new apartment in San Francisco. "How's the view?" I asked. "Incredible. You can see the bay from my bedroom window." "And the job?" "Challenging, exciting, everything I hoped it would be." "I'm glad." "Marlo?" "Yes?" "I love you. Distance doesn't change that." "I love you too, and you're right. Distance doesn't change that." After we hung up, I remained on the patio for a long time, thinking about the journey that had brought me to this moment. A year ago, I'd been a man who valued stability above all else, who was willing to overlook warning signs and accept comfortable lies rather than face difficult truths. Now I was a man who understood that real love required real honesty, that trust had to be earned and maintained, that some battles were worth fighting even when the cost was higher than anyone imagined. Derek was in prison, paying for his crimes with years of his life. Vanna was in Portland, living quietly with the consequences of her choices. Sierra was in San Francisco, building the career she'd always dreamed of. And I was here in Los Angeles, alone but not lonely, free but not aimless, ready for whatever came next. The city lights began to twinkle in the gathering darkness, millions of people living their lives, making their choices, facing their consequences. Somewhere among those lights, other marriages were ending, other affairs were beginning, other people were discovering the difference between love and convenience. But that was their story to write. Mine had led me here, to this moment, to this understanding, that the truth, however painful, was always preferable to the most comfortable lie. My phone buzzed with a text from Sierra. "Missing you already. Can't wait to show you San Francisco." I smiled and typed back, "Can't wait to see it through your eyes." Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to choose truth over convenience, courage over comfort. But tonight, the truth was enough. The story was complete, the circle closed, the consequences fully realized. What remained was the future, bright with possibility and built on the unshakable foundation of absolute honesty. In the distance, Los Angeles hummed with life and dreams and the endless human drama of choices and consequences. And I was ready to be part of it all, eyes wide open, heart unguarded, committed to the radical proposition that love and truth were not just compatible, but inseparable. The anniversary that had started this journey was long past, but every day with Sierra felt like a celebration of something real, something lasting, something worth fighting for. That was enough. That was everything.